Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another post-game show here on the Wolverine.com YouTube channel. Of course, Michigan 5-0 now after a 45-7 win over the Nebraska Cornhuskers in their first road trip of the season. Anthony Broome here with Ryan Van Bergen. We will discuss everything from this 45-7 victory. Really checked a lot of boxes, checked most of the boxes. You wanted to see this team come out on the road, send a message, and I thought that for the most part, that's what they did. It was a game where they showed we are bigger than you, we are faster than you, we are stronger than you. And honestly, you wanted to come out, see them establish things early on, go on one of those game-opening silence the crowd type of drives. And Ryan, overall, that's what I saw today.
It's a good old-fashioned can of whoop-ass. He brought it down to Lincoln and opened it up all over them on a hot, windy day. And this is what I think this team needed from what we've seen so far is this road test, this finally feeling like they have to come out and show out. And I feel like all three facets through four quarters, this was a really, really solid team performance.
We will talk about the offensive takeaways, the defensive takeaways, and everything coming out of this game. And we will also take your questions at the end of the show. Before we get into the some housekeeping to do, though, I want to read these two super chats off really quick. One from our buddy Shane Johnson for $4.99 says, besides Rod and Don looking like they are playing in slow motion, flawless, much like last year, turning up the heat starting in week 5. On to Minnesota. Let's go blue. Another one here from Zach Shandell for $9.99 says, like to give it up to the transfers. Josiah Stewart with 2 sacks, Ernest at linebacker, Ladarius Henderson at left tackle, earning their spots. What can you say about Donovan Edwards? Genuinely looks like Mullings should be the RB2. We'll get to that, I think, in a little bit. Some good and bad from Donovan Edwards in this game today. So we'll go through all those takeaways. But before we do that, there's always a little bit of housekeeping to do right up front here. I want to shout out our presenting sponsor for today's show, My Perfect Franchise. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career in your own hands? Or are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, Andy Luedecke can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, Andy helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. So do us a favor, call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. Best of all, his services are 100% free to use. So what do you have to lose? Give Andy a call. You can contact him at myperfectfranchise.net or at 404-973-9901. Find a time on his website to chat with him. Andy's a great guy, been a great partner of us. I know he does a great job over at My Perfect Franchise as well. So shout out to Andy. Shout out to My Perfect Franchise. Once again, you can call them at 404-973-9901. Ryan, I want to start this game on offense. And the biggest thing to me, again, and I said it in the open here, is, and I have to give Lincoln its props. Now, I had a hell of a time getting here. We'll probably get to that a little bit later too. But this is, I thought the crowd lives up to the hype. The atmosphere lives up to the hype. And I think the most complimentary you can be of Michigan during this game is that because it was a hot day and because it was a, as you put, a good old fashioned ass whooping, there were a lot of red that departed the stadium. Saw a lot more bleachers in that second half, and it started early with them setting the tone on that opening drive.
Yeah, they are back to the physical. And that was one of the things that I was going to make sure that I mentioned as a word, a theme, a topic of this game was the physicality and the toughness that I thought you saw offensively, defensively. It showed up on special teams, even on kick coverage. I felt like this was the most physical that we've seen this team. We came in and played some bully football. I can't remember what JJ referred to it as last year, but smash mouth or something of that sort. And that's what you saw from this team. And it was there from the opening drive. It was still there when we had our third and fourth string quarterbacks taking off with the ball and dropping their shoulder. I thought overall this team finally showed us that physicality that what separates Michigan from the other programs, I think, that are nationally dominant. I think that, everybody's kind of got their niche and it's specific to their team. But Michigan's niche has been a ground game and then a physicality and a toughness that's just, it wears on you. And Nebraska, they're no slouch. They've got a tradition of toughness in their program. So for us to come in and bully them the way that we were able to bully them and get what we wanted through offensively, defensively, through all 4 quarters. That's the other thing about it being complete. Not much more to be desired from anyone in any unit today.
It was another game too. It felt similar to the Iowa game last year, where the narrative going into that week 5 game on the road was, you're facing one of the nation's best run defenses. Nebraska was number 1 in the country coming into today, I believe, at like 43.6 yards per game. Michigan, now a lot of this is skewed by garbage time and 51 rushes on the day compared to 23 passes. That's not quite the balance that a lot of people would like to see this team strive for, but 51 rushes, 249 yards, 3 touchdowns against the nation's top run defense. And then on the flip side of that, when you talk about a rush offense from Nebraska that I think was somewhere in the top 5 or top 6, well over 200 yards per game, outside of a 74-yard touchdown run at the end of that game in garbage time, which again, another shutout that was kind of punted away by the backups on defense. Nebraska had 20 rushes for 32 yards, I believe it was, when you take that last one out of the game. So just getting it done in the trenches on both sides of the ball. That opening drive, going back to the scoring drives, 11 plays, 75 yards, almost 6 minutes off the clock, capped off by a 29-yard touchdown pass from J.J. McCarthy to Roman Wilson, which was, I tweeted this out. I mean, that was one of those, oh my God, JJ, no. And then he launches it. And then Roman Wilson just straight up Randy Mosses a guy, which I didn't know that he was capable of that. Their connection, and 2 more touchdowns on the day. That one from 29 yards out, 16 yards out on the second one. Those 2 are as locked in a quarterback wide receiver duo that we've seen at Michigan in, gosh, maybe, I don't know. It's been a while. He's a legitimate go-to guy right now. And it seems like he's getting a little bit better every week.
I think he plays with a chip on his shoulder, because although we at Michigan know who Roman Wilson is and what he's capable of, nationally he's not getting that attention. And I know that he knows and hears about the stellar wide receiver room in Columbus, and I know he's sick of it. I'd be the same way, especially if I'm putting up stats like he is. He's leading the Big Ten in a lot of statistical categories at receiver, and they're still talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. and Mbuka and the guys from Ohio State. And he doesn't get the shine and the recognition that I think he's deserved of. And this might do it, because I think that's one of the things that maybe he lacks is a lot of times he's just open, has separation. J.J. McCarthy puts it on the numbers, and then another touchdown. It doesn't look like he wins a battle for the football to score. But that catch he made today, that might be catch of the year. I mean, that to pin the ball on the back of the helmet of a guy and he's waving his arms up trying to get separation. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I feel like I've been watching football a long time. I've never seen a catch like that. And I very rarely do I get up and pause and like get closer to the TV, but like that was one of those moments like, holy shit, what did I just witness?
I mean, if that's what he's bringing to his repertoire now, because for a while we've seen Roman Wilson be a guy who just kind of, run down the field, and maybe we pop it or maybe Michigan pops it for a big play, or gets racks up some of those yak yards. But I mean, his route running is crisp. I mean, now he's apparently Randy Moss in the red zone, and that is such a welcome development for this offense. And I thought that JJ in general, as we kind of transitioned into the game he had, 12 for 16, 156 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks, was good on the ground again, just had the 2 rushes for 30 yards, but just seems very in command and in control of this offense again for really the 4th time in 5 weeks. And it's becoming clearer now. And we felt this way at the time. That game against Bowling Green was a major outlier. Right now, Sharon Moore is in his bag calling plays. I think that J.J. McCarthy is in his bag in terms of executing those plays. I mean, some of the things he was doing today, rolling out, throwing across his body, that second touchdown to Roman Wilson was about as impressive as it gets. And you just get the sense that they're comfortable taking whatever a defense gives them. And that's, to me, that was the next evolution of what this offensive attack looks like.
I think so. I mean, the thing that you're almost starting to get lulled because it's so consistent, but it can be overlooked. There's only 4 passes that JJ had that didn't hit their targets. And to be honest, the first one was a drop, if I'm not mistaken. So 3 of them got to target, and his completion percentage and how consistently he's putting balls in good positions for his receivers. That's another thing that, like you were saying, the Bowling Green was an outlier game. So many times we're seeing JJ McCarthy throw on time, perfectly timed, and then they're also throwing it to where the defender can't get to it, or he's throwing his guy open. And that's just something that I feel like is that next level of development we heard about all offseason, that JJ's taken these strides. He's gotten better. And of course, that's the typical song and dance as you go through an offseason. But I think it's shown up in 4 out of the last 5 games that these are the different steps he's taken. He's smart when he gets to use his legs. He extends plays even longer, but hasn't made anything too errant. And he's placing balls and throwing guys open, and he's operating at the highest level I've seen a Michigan quarterback operate at in a very long time, maybe ever.
And there's plenty to unlock with that too. And I think when we talk about improving on the margins from here and how this team gets better, I mean, again, not really a whole lot to complain about in the run game with the 250 yards rushing. Blake Corum led the way, 16 carries, 74 yards and a touchdown. I just think he continues to look more and more like his vintage self. Donovan Edwards, I actually thought, and maybe we park here with Donovan for a sec. I actually thought for the first part of this game, maybe earlier on in this game, I thought was maybe some of the best football he's played all year. It seemed like he was more decisive. He's putting his foot in the ground, getting upfield. And I don't know if late, it seemed like Michigan was maybe trying to get him that first touchdown of the season. It seemed like he wore down a little bit late and then went to kind of back to some of the tendencies we saw from early on in the season. But I think that from the two of them, having them combine for 30 carries, having them, I think for the most part, play well and look like their normal selves against a defensive, I think you just need to give Nebraska their flowers. I know they gave up 45 points, but those guys, I thought those guys, they're physical up front. I think they're extremely well coached on both sides of the ball. It was just one of those days where, you're a team that's rebuilding and trying to figure itself out. And you're just going up against a team they just have better players than you. They're bigger than you. They're faster than you. They're stronger than you. But the run game in general, I thought, again, with Donovan in particular, I thought was a step in the right direction. The box score maybe doesn't bear that out with only 3.4 yards per rush. But early in the game, I think I saw a little more of what we're used to seeing from him.
I thought the same thing, actually, with the first couple series of touches that he got, that he looked a little bit more like he was seeking contact, a little bit more like he was bursting at the line of scrimmage, a little more decisive. And there were a few plays that I thought for sure we were going to get one of those long rippers. That was a 50, 60-yard run from Donovan Edwards. And then Corum, I thought Corum took a hit early. Nothing that I thought was injury or anything like that, but just something that was like, oh, is my mouthpiece still in? Like one of those type of hits. And I feel like once he took that hit, it was like he tasted blood and like, oh yeah, that's football. I'm ready for this. And thought you saw him kind of engage and go full go in Blake Corum. And I think that this is a result that you can look at this as a rushing game and say, oh, that's not typical Michigan. But like you were saying, with the Nebraska being the run defense that they are, this is a solid running performance. And you got to give a lot of credit to the 3 guys in the middle, Trevor Keegan, Zach Zinner, and then it's not Mooseman. I played with Mooseman, but they really handled business well on the interior line. And number 0 from Nebraska, he's a dog of a D tackle. That guy is a monster. And I watched him a little bit, and I can't remember his name, but I saw him on a lot of plays where he could have been a disruptor, and we got him handled through a combo block and made it to the second level. So all around the rushing attack, from the offensive line play to how the both backs played, and even Mullings and some of the other guys when they got in there, this was the physical style of running. This will win, can compete for Big Ten championships, this rushing attack.
Yeah, and I know Clayton Safey and I were talking about this during the game, and I know that even on the message board, it seems like there's still a frustration about a lack of explosive plays, and not to sound dark or macabre or anything like that. And I just kind of, my response to that is, would you rather be destroyed by a house explosion or be butchered little by little? It's dark and it's gross to think about, but this Michigan offense is full of butchers right now. I think their offensive line, I think this was as good as they've played all season long. Ladarius Henderson gets to start at left tackle. Carson Barnhart slides over to the right side, a more natural spot for him. And I know those guys got, gave up a few pressures here and there, but, as a starting 5, I thought that was their most consistent performance of the year. We saw Miles Hint was on the injury report. tested out a knee injury pre-game. It just seemed like he wasn't able to go. So we'll see how that develops moving forward. I think they still want to get Hinton out there because we'll see. I mean, there are still snaps when, you're throwing 6 or 7 offensive linemen and a couple of tight ends, and they get the H-back out there in Max Bredesen, and they still want to come downhill at you, and there's going to be a role for all those guys. But in general, I thought the offensive line, the switch that we had been waiting to see with the tackles, I thought was a big positive for them today.
I thought so too, and we talked last week that Ladarius Henderson has done enough to earn an opportunity to start and see what the production looks like, see what the chemistry is like there next to Trevor Keegan. And I thought he played well. I thought all across the board, offensive line played well. We did a really good job. I thought getting our backs into chances at the second level, and then also J.J. McCarthy. I mean, aside from maybe 1 or 2 pressures where there were some mistakes, but overall he was kept very, very clean. And again, they're not going against guys that are just scrubs, from a community college. These are Nebraska recruits, and these guys can play football, and they came out and handled them. And I thought that was something that gives you promise, because there's other opponents that I felt like were worse quality that we didn't play this dominant or in this fashion. And to know that this is still the same physical, dominant Michigan team 5 games in, and I feel a lot more confident after this win in Nebraska.
Any other lingering thoughts on the offensive side of the ball? Again, you go through the box score, and I know 51 rushes, 249 yards. I mean, that's probably the stat of the day, just the 51 rushes in general. But just kind of workmanlike there. Nothing to write home about, but this was a team that imposed its will and went up and down the field and finished drives. There's been a lot made about, the new clock rule and how it's affected Michigan on offense. If you just take care of your business and finish drives with, positive yards and not punt, not getting off the field quick and getting those touchdowns. And hey, how about this? 10 points from the backups today. I mean, that's the first time that's happened all year. First time the backups have scored at all. So, that's when you start to get in those scores that look like, 45-7 or 49-3 or, maybe even into the 50s. But, another 2.5 quality quarters from the starting offense, 35 points scored. And you just feel like there's just so much more to unlock there too. Really nice work from them today.
Yeah, I mean, JJ has 16 passes and he's done for the day. So there's not going to be too much magic and explosives and fireworks when that's how many plays and passing attempts that he gets. There's only so many throws that you can make when you play 2.5 quarters. So I thought one thing that I will say is that I feel like some of the supporting cast played their roles really well today. I thought Colston Loveland had a big 3rd down conversion and caught balls that he was expected to catch and made the plays he was expected to make. Cornelius Johnson, I thought, had one that was good. Clemens, it was good to see him back. You keep hearing things about Clemens. He had a couple nice routes. One in particular was like a deep drag or deep in, and ball was right there on the money. He made the catch. I don't think we had hardly any drops. The execution was just so top level today. So top level. I don't know if we had how many tackles for loss they came away with, but it had to be close to none. And it may not be the sexiest detail alive, but man, the execution and efficiency was just top notch from our offense.
Yeah, I want to shout out Peyton O'Leary and Darius Clemens, guys we haven't seen a lot of this year. They were banged up in camp, banged up coming out of camp. Oftentimes, and Clemens had obviously the more prominent role, but Michigan says, you're not going to get the ball and you're not going to get on the field unless you block. I thought he blocked well. Obviously had, the 2 catches for 29 yards. Peyton O'Leary, a catch for 8 yards and his first career touchdown. So that was really nice to see. Really awesome work from those guys. Jaden Denegal's first career touchdown pass as well. We saw all 4 quarterbacks that traveled and made the trip. So again, workmanlike performance, and you did what you were supposed to do against a team that you were just all that more talented than. So we will slide over to the defensive side of the ball in a moment, but we want to discuss our second sponsor of the episode here with our pal Susie Surma over at Modus Realty. Have you ever thought about buying a home to be closer, but not too close to Ann Arbor? Well, Susie Surma of Modus Realty has the perfect home for you. This beautiful and private property is just 20 minutes from Ann Arbor, 15 miles from downtown Northville and downtown Plymouth. The home is situated on 8.22 acres with a nature preserve on one side that can't be built on. So it's the perfect blend of modern comfort and natural beauty. And this house went live, I believe, on Thursday or Friday, and and has an open house Sunday, October 1st from 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern. So it's a ranch-style brick home in Salem Township with just under 2,200 finished square feet on the first floor and 1,800 more living space below in a finished basement. And it's got all the bells and whistles: 4 bedrooms, 2 full baths, 2 half baths, a 2-car garage. Most of the major appliances are included. There's a walk-out basement, perfect for hosting that tailgate party before the game. And you're located on 8 acres of land, which allows you to enjoy the peaceful serenity of nature right in your own backyard. And this time of the year in the state of Michigan, you have the colors changing. Absolutely gorgeous scenes out there. So, when you see a house like this, you want to be able to work with an experienced agent that knows the market, that knows that they're going to get you the best possible setup into a new house. So feel free to reach out to Susie. Looks like a great home there in Salem Township. You can contact Susie Surma today at 248-767-5633 or send her an email over at susie@modusre.com. And whether it's the Salem house or anything else that you're interested in, be sure to check out our friend Susie Surma. And again, if you want to check out that Salem house, Sunday, October 1st, 12 to 2 p.m. So reach out to Susie for more information. And thank you, Susie, for your sponsorship here on our show. Defensive side of the ball, Ryan, I feel like this is going to be one that you are the most fired up to talk about because of what we discussed in terms of the garbage time adjusted rush yards, only 32 yards rushing on the ground outside of that touchdown late in the fourth quarter. That run wall held up. And when you play an offense that wants to come downhill at you and runs, the triple option stuff, regular option, a lot of misdirection, those guys have to be disciplined, and you have to be able to hold up. It's hot outside, so you start to get a little tired, and your legs are wobbly, and your discipline kind of can get shaky when it gets hot out. But again, that defensive line against a pretty physical, another physical Nebraska trench attack, I thought those guys were outstanding. And how about this fat guy interception? 4 picks on the year. 2 of them are from defensive linemen. I know you love that.
Big man. We don't use the F word. Big man interception. Game ball to the entire defensive line. To come out without Mason Graham and to play the way that they played, these guys had an incredible game. And shame on us for even having doubts about our edge guys, because Michigan produces edge guys. That's what we do. It's what we've been doing. The edge guys today showed up huge. Aiden Hutchinson, he showed up huge on Thursday. But Braden McGregor, I thought from right off the bat, has that tip that goes right to your guy Walker Kenneth
Grant.
Kenneth Grant. I don't know why I messed that up so much, but he ends up with the pick.
You've had Kenneth Walker on the brain.
Yeah.
That bothers me.
And fantasy. Josiah Stewart, I thought we've been waiting for him to show up, and there's been some glimpses and some flashes. There's been some times he's come off the ball, and I'm like, that guy's got that twitch. He's got that edge. He's definitely have speed, and today he shows up obviously with 2 sacks. But I thought overall, our defensive line, our edge guys, I thought Derek Moore had an amazing game. It may not show up statistically, but he had a really solid game, really solid outing. And then, the middle of the interior, the guys are able to hold up and let our great linebackers clean up every run play that gets to second level. So, honestly, just super excited about how the guys got to play and how everybody got to eat. When there's multiple sacks with multiple guys, it's an exciting trip back home. So I hope those guys are enjoying themselves as they make the journey back to Ann Arbor.
My apologies to Kenneth Grant. It was a big man interception. I should run the stairs here in the heat for that. But 2 sacks from Josiah Stewart. I believe those were his first 2 sacks of the year. We'd love to see that. He was going to be big in a game like this. Derek Moore continues to impress. Braden McGregor had a really nice day. Other than that, you look up and down this defense, and I want to, because there might be Nebraska fans that come on here and we got embarrassed. So what are the Michigan guys saying about us? I think they have some really good pieces on offense. I think you have a quarterback in this Heinrich Harbaugh guy. He's 6'5". That's a lot of quarterback to tackle, especially when he gets going with a full head of steam. You stuffed him on a 4th and 1. We know that Anthony Grant's a quality back. We've seen it with him before. And Matt Rule is, again, they're probably not going to win the 8 games that I predicted they would in the football preview, but I just feel like Matt Rule gets it, and they're going to figure this thing out relatively quickly. And he's a guy that I think this Nebraska team is not going to be someone that teams are going to want to play later in the year. And the fact that Michigan got them now in their own building, I think I think that's a good sign for them, because I do think they might hit their stride here at some point. And, let's just say you flip the locations and maybe Michigan plays this week at Maryland. And then the week before the Ohio State game is this game in Lincoln. I think that you're going to see a much different Nebraska team at the end of the year. So I don't know. Any thoughts on what you've seen from them so far?
I'm going against you here. I think Nebraska is a burning dumpster fire that someone needs to go put out after Scott Frost just completely, ruined the culture of their program. And I think, nothing against Matt Rule. I've seen his press conferences. He seems like a very nice man, but I don't know that I'd be a guy that wants to go and play and risk ligaments and limbs for Matt Rule. It's just the vibe I get from him. I had the same vibe when I went on the official visit with John L. Smith. Just not this guy. Can't be this guy. And I don't think it's a bad team. I think that their coaching is at least needs to be looked at. And then I think quarterback wise, that guy, the way he throws a football, I can't. Names are just not today. Saturday today or not. I'm not a names guy, but their quarterback, the way he throws it from that low slot, there's a reason that he has so many passes tipped. And it's because he's not a mechanically sound quarterback. And we've had non-mechanically sound quarterbacks, so I know how to identify one, and that's one of them. And so I just don't see this Nebraska team with who they have running the show, both offensively at quarterback and then as a head coach, Matt Rule. I just don't see them there. I think that, Rutgers is better than Nebraska. In my opinion, Maryland's better than Nebraska. Nebraska, you might be as good as Northwestern. The two ends get to go together. But do you want to be as good as Northwestern? I don't know. Ooh. That's just my personal take. I don't think they're a very quality team. I don't think it's because their players are trash. I just think as an organization, they don't have it right now.
A lot of work to do there still, for sure. Can we talk about your official visit with John L. Smith? I don't know that we've addressed that on here before.
Yeah. Well,
are you at liberty to discuss it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any NDAs signed or anything like that. So, but I just remember going, and it wasn't that I was super into the idea of going to East Lansing anyway as a college, but I was always a Michigan fan. But it's like I got to check it out and see what the deal is. And the guy, he grabs me, the extra firm handshake, then he gives me the other hand on the forearm, and then he starts squeezing my biceps and he's squeezing my back, and it's like he's feeling meat from a butcher shop that he wants to know. And then the next thing he tells me about is how he has climbed Mount Everest twice. And I'm just like, I don't care. We just met. I don't know you. And so it's just the vibes weren't there. And it's funny because I talked to other recruits, because we see each other going to different schools and different visits. And I wasn't the only one that caught that vibe from John L. Just whatever it was, the wavelength, we did not operate on the same amplitude.
Man, a lot of no, I'll just stop there. I don't want to go down that route on this podcast. Take the Iowa money line tonight if you haven't put money on that game yet. Anyways, anything else? I mean, Nebraska threw the ball a lot more than I thought they would. Harbaugh was 14 for 25, 199 yards. Obviously, the interception on the tipped ball. It is weird that a guy that's 6'5" has so many tipped passes. I mean, I feel like to a certain extent, you expect that from a guy like Caden McNamara. No Cade shade, just saying, he was like 6 foot, 6'1", whatever it is, 6'2". So it was odd to see that, but it seemed like Mike Sainer still was a little banged up. Him and Rod Moore were alternating a lot today. Keon Saab was back on the field this week, led the team in tackles. Let's see, 5 passes defended. Quentin Johnson had 2 of those. Braden McGregor had 1, again, to go back to his good day. Rod Moore had 1. Derek Moore had 1. Yeah, it's just, again, like on the offensive side of the ball, just another workman-like day. I think it's on a few drives when the fortitude of those guys were tested, what were arguably, Nebraska's 2 best drives of the day are, ends in a missed field goal. There was the missed field goal, or I'm sorry, a turnover on downs on that second drive, and then a missed field goal. Was it right at the start of the third quarter? So, yeah, even when Michigan's defense was tested in this game, those guys were able to kind of clamp down and get off the field.
I thought so. And I think that the one thing, if I were to try and find a hole to poke, is that there were some guys on RPOs that if we don't get a tip or if the ball's a little more accurate, that that's a dangerous throw, and it might be a gash because there's only one safety that can help you if you get beat as a corner and they run a quick slant or something in an RPO situation. And I thought there were some times, and it's just something that, I'm always searching for where can there be a concern. And, these guys aren't getting tested in the red zone ever. I mean, how many jump balls have you seen our corners have to defend? I know they do it in practice, but it's different when you get game reps. And I just feel like I hope these guys can stay sharp and be above, the monotony. It's like playing out in right field and all of a sudden you're looking up into the stands and seeing if you can find your mom and dad. Like, these guys aren't being tested. And I hope that we can continue to be dominant when it comes time, because against Penn State, against Maryland, the last 3 games, we're going to get tested by all 3 of those offenses. So I just want these guys to continue to work and develop, because you can get, dull with success.
We're going to move to questions here in a second, but I can't believe I didn't say this in the offense part. Kalel Mullings got some early run today. 5 rushes, 43 yards, the 20-yard touchdown right after the interception. That, I don't know that I can sit here and say that changes maybe whatever the chemical mixture of that running back rotation is. But if he's running as hard and with as much juice and wiggle as he has, they're going to have to keep him and have this be, keep him rushing early and have him be, maybe the third head of this 3-headed monster. I mean, in a game where Corum and Edwards maybe get 15 carries apiece, I don't think it's crazy to ask for 8 or 9 out of Mullings with what we've seen from him so far. I think him moving to running back full time just seems more comfortable, more at ease. The vision's better. I really like what we've seen with him over the last few weeks, and I would expect him to get some more run out there.
Him being involved, because I was noticing this tendency, so I'm sure other teams have too, him being involved, especially when he's in the shotgun and he's offset, it's really important to have him involved on passing plays and get him runs out of the shotgun with the offset, because I don't think we love Blake Corum in pass pro, and I don't think we love Donovan Edwards in pass pro when JJ's in the gun. So when we bring Mullings in and he's offset in the gun, almost everybody I think is going, it's a pass. He's in here for protection purposes only. They only give this to him if we're under center. So to get him some carries out of the gun, I think would be huge, because it's going to be a tendency breaker when we go up against other offenses. And, just like the jump pass was the setup for the entire year last year with Mullings going into that backfield, I feel like having him in regular scenarios, game scenarios, in the shotgun, as well as, with him in the backfield under center, just makes defenses have to second guess. Can we commit it all to the run? Can we commit it all to the pass? Because they do it all out of all these packages.
Yeah, and just last thought on Kalel Mullings. I mean, don't be surprised at all if Michigan kind of rolls out that one more year campaign like they did last year, and he's a guy that is one of those targets, because I just feel like he's starting to kind of hit his stride with that position group. So I think that pretty much does it. We shout out the special teams. I guess there was Morris had a 30-yard punt return, but that was after he muffed it right off the bat. But make something out of nothing there. James Turner was perfect on the day. Jake thought did fine. So not really a whole lot to say there. A clean day for the most part from that group. So let's move into the questions portion of the show. Have a lot in the queue right now, but if you want to get yourself in there, send out a question. If you want to get yourself bumped to the front of the line, send on in a super chat. And our first one here is actually just a super chat. So a shout out to Judah, who has sent one in for $15. So thank you so much for that, Judah. A couple here from Cameron Stokes, $1.99 a piece. He says, probably the most boring, dominant win in a while. Yeah, I mean, boring is in the eye of the beholder, but when you score 45 points, I think that's a lot less boring than, the 31-7 wins have been, so to speak. So yeah, definitely dominant. And then Ryan, this is a question from Cameron Stokes. As Georgia escaped Auburn this afternoon, thoughts on Michigan potentially being number 1 in the next poll?
I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, Georgia, I think, is going to have to lose in order to be knocked off that podium. This last game, was it in Auburn or was it at Georgia?
They were at Auburn.
They were at Auburn, so that's an away game at Auburn. And I know Auburn's not a great team this year, but winning on the road in a conference SEC game, just to win is enough to keep the number 1 spot. So we're fine. We want them at number 1. We just sit back here at number 2 and keep that chip on our shoulder.
Yep. And then another from Cameron, this one for $4.99. He says, do you think that J.J. McCarthy needs to lighten up on some of his passes? He seems to only throw fastballs to his receivers. Not a complaint, just wondering. So thoughts on mixing velocities and things like that, Ryan?
It's funny you mention it because I actually noticed the velocity of the throws today, and there seemed to be a little extra pepper on them. But you got to consider the conditions they were in. They said that there were swirling winds, gusts up to 30 miles an hour. The commentators can't shut up about the wind, and they also cannot stop mentioning his hockey background, which I don't know why is so relevant apparently. But I'm sick of hearing that JJ Hockey used to play hockey. Almost all people used to play other sports. It's not relevant. But I think that he, one, had to do it because of the conditions, and two, if you look at the routes that he's throwing, he has to get the ball in there, zipped in there, because it's thrown through the middle of the defense. We really just didn't see too many fades. I think Roman Wilson maybe was a fade, but it was kind of more of a scramble drill as opposed to a fade. But I think he has the touch. We've seen him have the touch, but the bullets I think are intentional, and I think the receivers know what's coming at them, because I mean I played with a quarterback and Ryan Mallett, and Ryan never took anything off his throws, no matter what, just because he liked to show how hard he could throw a football. And I don't think that's what JJ is out there doing. I think he understands touch, and when he needs to, throw touch to the wind and just let one rip. And he was letting them rip today. He had some high velocity throws down the middle of the field.
Yeah, wind gusts were up to, I'm sure everyone heard on the broadcast, up to 30 miles an hour. It wasn't going to be a game where you were going to air the ball out down the field. Like that just was never, that's not really Michigan's recipe anyways, but I feel like the passing game was going to be those darts over the middle of the field and the quick game. And that's what we saw for the most part. And our friend Account 22 says JJ threw a touch pass to Samaj Morgan last week. Yeah, back shoulder throw where you just kind of put enough on it to get there. So we'll see Cameron. He could be better there. There was a few he missed, but overall, run game, pass game, I thought JJ was terrific. Let's go to one from Schaub Fam, who says, my only question is, are Michigan's only tough games going to be the last 3 of the season?
Well, I think going into Michigan State, and when you say tough game, that's ambiguous as a term, but going into Michigan State in their night game environment is going to be a tough win against a rival, because they're going to do anything they can, and it's going to get dirty, and it's going to be chippy, and it's going to be gross, and there's probably going to be a review afterwards to see if people should be allowed to play anymore. But I think that's going to be a tough game, and I think Indiana coming to the Big House could provide some challenge. So I don't think the only tough games. Do I think that that'll be our biggest test? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Penn State, Maryland is a scary, the more this season goes on, the more I get scared for the Maryland game between Penn State, Ohio State. But the last 3 games are going to determine if this is a good season or not, for sure. But I think the road test Michigan State and then Indiana coming here, both of those games I think will test us.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that this is a team that will, put up a huge fight against Michigan, but Purdue, you get Purdue at home in November. That's a team that put it on Illinois today, and I don't think Illinois is very good at all. But to blow out a Brett Bielema team, I think is impressive and something to be commended. And again, there's always going to be, and pardon my French, earmuffs for the little ones out there. There's always 1 or 2 of those what I call oh shit games throughout the year, right, where you just have to kind of get out of it. We saw it last year with Illinois. The game in this building 2 years ago against Nebraska was one of those games. So it's going to happen at some point when people aren't expecting it. And that's just football. You got to make plays. You got to get out of there with a win. So, we'll see. Those last 3 games are certainly the ones that define, make or break the season. But, at the end of the day, you take care of your business, you'll be back in Indianapolis and back in the college football playoffs. So we'll see what happens there. And then Cameron Stokes says he has one more for us for $4.99. Says the last one. And this Dane Brugler said he talked to a scout, and that scout said that Roman Wilson is his number 1 senior wide receiver on their draft board. So that could be something to watch. It could be something to watch. There are a ton of NFL scouts in the building in both Ann Arbor and on the road, wherever Michigan goes. I know that we ran into a couple guys from different teams in the elevator day, and we just asked, who are you watching? And just kind of shake their head and say, everyone. There's probably 20 guys on the list to keep an eye on. But the way that Roman Wilson has played, and when you look at an NFL that is increasingly becoming kind of basketball on grass. I mean, he looks the part of what that league is looking for right now. So thoughts on Roman through 5 games?
He's elite. He's not getting the national respect that he deserves. It's encouraging to me to hear this, that he's, a number one receiver, at least being considered. I think when it comes to the NFL, it's going to be really hard to not draft Marvin Harrison Jr. as your first guy if you're looking for a receiver. And I don't mean any disrespect to him. I think he's maybe one of the most talented wide receivers I've ever seen in college football. But I also think Roman Wilson he's that new breed. He's that, he's the Cooper Kupp. He's the Devontae Smith. He's that guy that's a little bit smaller. He doesn't fit the frame of what you think of, the Calvin Johnson frame, the Mike Evans frame of what you think is a good receiver. But the frame has changed because it's about getting separation and finding space and being smart about finding space. And Roman Wilson and his connection with J.J. McCarthy, I mean, it's almost a bad thing, but it hasn't bit us yet that when JJ's in total scramble mode, I can just see his eyes looking for number one. Where's number one? Because he's going to find the space. And I just feel like he's going to be a guy that bails out quarterbacks in the next level and maybe one of the better receiver prospects that comes out of Michigan when he gets his chance at the next level.
I believe he's up to 20 catches on the season, 8 touchdowns, which is just crazy impressive. He's going to help J.J. McCarthy break that single season touchdown mark on its own, almost, it feels like. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch. And again, you just got to keep doing it. The thing with Roman Wilson is consistency. We've seen him have big games in past seasons, and then you kind of don't hear from him for a few weeks. And Cornelius Johnson's the same way. He had a couple key grabs today, but you need those guys to be the 1-2 punch that you would expect a 5th-year guy and a senior to be. So a lot of good stuff there from those guys. We have one from Zach Shandell that we will take, and this is kind of last call for questions here before we close it out. Zach says, what do you think, for $4.99, Zach says, what do you think the biggest focus in film room is this week? What does Jim and staff take away as areas for improvement after today?
I think you're probably on offense looking to see where were there opportunities where, we could have made a cut and got different yardage here, or we made the wrong read on this pass play, even though the ball didn't come this direction. There's still things like that happening. You don't see them as a fan, but there's still execution issues that, if we executed flawlessly, we would have had even better result. But overall, I think it's just maintaining the idea of we need to get better. That's the toughest thing I think this team is facing with this early cushy schedule. And now, getting into October, it's starting to ramp up a little bit, but the best teams, they get better from September to October, better from October to November. And then by the end of November, they're full stride. They're playing their best football, and to continue to improve when you're winning games easily is tougher. And so it takes a lot of leadership, and it takes, their coaches to be able to continue to motivate and get these guys back to focusing on, hey, it's not about beating Minnesota. It's about being the best team we can be. And are we really there yet? And if not, let's work towards it. So there's an image that these guys have of how they want to be playing, the brand of football they want to be playing in November. So the focus, I think, is to get to that picture and get to be that team. And we took some steps today.
Yeah. And I think when you go back and as you flip to the Minnesota film, it's a team that also ran for 200 yards today. Again, granted, they were playing Louisiana, but Louisiana, I'm looking at the box score for that game. They ran for 177 yards on Minnesota, which, I mean, this is a Big Ten defense. That's pretty impressive, and popped some big plays in both the run game and through the air. So you look for those areas, look for opportunities to maybe try and generate some more of those explosives. But again, Minnesota, I think similarly to the last two opponents that Michigan has played, I think, solid to serviceable to good on the ground, okay at best at quarterback. And then defensively, I think more so than the last few weeks, I think that they'll be able to kind of pick their matchup and exploit that from there. So I think that's, I mean, focus, it's hard. You got to go back and watch the film. We're going to talk to Jim Harbaugh on Monday, and he'll say how great everyone played and how it was, an excellent football game. But it's hard for me to say what they need to focus on until you go back and look at it. But, today, as we kind of close this thing out here, I think as well-rounded a performance we've seen from this team. And, to be a champion, you just keep striving for that next level, and you're trying to hit that next gear. And, if those first 4 games were kind of you feeling the season out and building an identity, I think this game number 5 really kicks off this next stretch of 4 games where you're setting yourself up for what you're going to look like in November.
I agree. And I just think that, there's still more that this team is capable of, even though they are performing as one of the top teams in the country with how they're currently performing. There's still more levels to unlock. And so I think as a fan, and even as the players and the coaches, they're all interested to see how far can we take this thing?
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. It has been a long couple, definitely 24 to 48 hours for me. My day started at 4:30 a.m. on Friday with a flight out of Chicago a flight to Chicago that ultimately was delayed by 9 hours. So had to rebook that. I wound up rebooking a flight that went to Denver and that was supposed to fly into Lincoln. I get to Denver. I get to the gate for my flight to Lincoln, and that flight gets canceled and pushed to 7:30 this morning. But they put me on standby for a flight that would have went out to Lincoln last night. I didn't get on that flight. So then the gate agent puts me on a flight to Omaha. I get to the gate for Omaha, and the plane is delayed for an hour and a half because the engine is leaking oil. But come to find out, they get everyone on the plane. They test the engine. There was no engine leak. Someone spilled oil out on the runway, the tarmac, whatever it is, and they thought it was leaking oil. So I didn't even get to Omaha. Again, my day started at 5 a.m. I didn't get to Omaha last night until 1 a.m. local time. And I was able to crash somewhere, get a ride to Lincoln first thing in the morning, and I made it. But that's a roundabout way of me saying I'm ready to shut it down and get to bed because, and fingers crossed, knock on wood, I have a 6 a.m. flight out of Lincoln tomorrow morning. So I am putting my body through more hell than any of those guys who played on the field today in 95-degree weather did, relatively speaking. So, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Producer Megan, thank you so much for your time and sitting through a double dip today as the producer of both the Michigan and Nebraska shows. Michigan wins 45-7, 5-0. 5-0 is 5-0, and today was as good as it's looked so far this year. So next week from Minnesota, I will not be traveling. That will be an in-office post-game show for me. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to getting back with you guys soon. So thanks to everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Get in on the Wolverine.com for $1 for your first month or 25% off for an annual subscription. And we will talk to you again next time.